What if you tried to surf a tsunami? Imagine this. It's a blazing hot day on a quiet beach in Sumatra. The sun is burning overhead, the waves are calm, and you're waxing your surfboard, humming your favorite playlist in your head. There's no one around, just you, the sea, and a growing sense that something weird is about to happen. Suddenly, your phone buzzes. An emergency alert flashes. Tsunami warning, seek higher ground immediately. Most people would drop their board and run for the hills. But you stare out at the ocean and smile. What if I surf it? It's the kind of thought that gets you labeled as either a thrill seeker or a lunatic. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you've always wanted to know if a tsunami is just a really, really big wave. Why not ride it? Think of the adrenaline, the fame, the YouTube views. First human to surf a tsunami. Gone wrong. Of course, reality check. This isn't just a big wave. Tsunamis aren't like those majestic barrels you see at Pipeline or Mavericks. They're not curling, playful, or shaped for style. They're walls of water, relentless, fast, and absolutely merciless. More like a liquid freight train than something you'd want to stand on. But let's entertain the idea for a moment. Because surfing a tsunami, while completely insane, raises some fascinating scientific questions. How fast would you have to go to catch it? Could a surfboard even stay intact? What would happen to your body before, during, and after the ride? This thought experiment isn't just wild. It's rooted in real danger. Tsunamis are among the deadliest natural disasters on Earth. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami killed over 230,000 people across Asia. Entire cities were swallowed. It's not a wave, it's a planetary punch. But hey, we're here to ask the big what-ifs. So if you were crazy enough to try surfing one, how would that go? Let's paddle into this watery nightmare and find out what actually makes a tsunami tick. Before we hand you a surfboard and send you off into a towering wall of seawater, let's talk science. Because a tsunami isn't just a big wave. It's a physical phenomenon with terrifying mechanics, born from deep under the Earth's crust and charged with more energy than most bombs could ever dream of. So how does a tsunami form? It all starts with tectonic plates, the giant slabs of rock that make up the Earth's outer shell. These plates constantly grind, shift, and collide beneath our feet, especially along what geologists call subduction zones. When one plate suddenly slips beneath another, a massive amount of energy is released. If that happens under the ocean floor, it displaces a colossal volume of water. Think of it like tossing a boulder into a bathtub, but instead of a splash, it's a shockwave that can cross entire oceans. This displaced water sends ripples across the sea, except these ripples aren't small. They're hundreds of miles wide and travel at speeds that would make a commercial airliner blush, up to 500 miles per hour in the open ocean. That's about 10 times faster than the world's top surfers can paddle. In deep water, you might barely notice the wave. It could be just 3 feet high, but hundreds of miles long. But as the tsunami approaches land, it hits shallower water. The wave slows down, sometimes to 30 or 40 mph. But all that energy has to go somewhere. So the wave grows. It rises higher and higher, compressing like a spring that's suddenly released. In some cases, this wall of water can reach 30, 60, even 100 feet tall. And it's not just one wave. Tsunamis often come in multiple surges, each potentially deadlier than the last. And here's the kicker. Unlike normal surfable waves, which break gently and curl at the top, a tsunami doesn't behave. It doesn't curl. It doesn't crash. It simply surges forward like a vertical tide, swallowing everything in its path. Trees, cars, houses, entire cities. From a physics standpoint, the force of a tsunami is measured in kilopascals, units of pressure. It can easily exceed the structural resistance of concrete buildings. If you were trying to surf it, you'd need a board stronger than steel and reflexes faster than light. But let's say you're out there anyway. You've got your board, you're scanning the horizon, and you see it. A massive, unbroken swell rising out of the sea like a dark, moving cliff. What happens if you try to catch it? The chain reaction begins, and so does the chaos. So, you're out there, floating on your board, eyes locked on a wave that looks like it's swallowing the sky. The ocean beneath you isn't rippling anymore. It's rising, warping, humming with energy. You start paddling like your life depends on it. Because let's be honest, it really, really does. Let's imagine you somehow time it just right. You manage to catch the leading slope of the wave, and suddenly, you're no longer paddling. You're flying. Your board glides forward at nearly 40 miles per hour, and for one surreal moment, you're doing the impossible. You're surfing a tsunami, but that moment doesn't last long. The tsunami isn't just water. It's a brutal mixture of ocean and destruction. Broken trees, metal shards, fishing boats, even cars, all churned together into a deadly soup. You're not just riding a wave, you're skimming the top of a moving demolition derby. Meanwhile, back on land, the rest of the world is spiraling into panic. Coastal cities trigger sirens. Highways jam as families flee inland. Emergency alerts take over every phone, every screen. Airports shut down. Hospitals prepare for mass casualties. The media loses its mind. News anchors cut in mid-broadcast. Tsunami wave approaching. Take shelter immediately. But for many, it's already too late. People at the beach don't see the traditional signs. There's no giant wall of water from the start. Often, it begins with a sudden and eerie recession of the sea. Curious beachgoers walk out onto the newly exposed seabed, not realizing they're standing on the edge of disaster. Then the first surge arrives. Entire neighborhoods are swallowed in minutes. Power grids fail. Cellular networks crash. Search and rescue teams can't reach affected areas because roads are either underwater or gone entirely. And amid all this, you, our hypothetical surfer, are now clinging to your board, dodging debris at highway speeds, praying you don't get impaled by a telephone pole. Even if you survive the initial ride, you're still in deep trouble. Tsunamis often come in multiple waves, spaced minutes or even hours apart, and each one can be more destructive than the last. The water doesn't just rush in, it stays. It floods homes, poisons drinking water, and makes even rescue operations a nightmare. And remember, you're not surfing back to shore. You're surfing into disaster zones. But the chaos doesn't stop there. What happens when nature gets angry and the environment fights back? How a tsunami transforms the planet? The wave has crashed. The surfer, if still alive, is somewhere inland, stranded on top of a flooded building or tangled in downed power lines. But while the human world reels in chaos, nature itself is undergoing a transformation. Tsunamis don't just knock down buildings, they alter coastlines. Beaches vanish. Forests near shorelines are flattened. River estuaries are permanently widened. And most critically, massive amounts of salt water are pushed far inland, poisoning freshwater supplies, killing crops, and turning fertile land into dead zones. The ocean, too, doesn't walk away unscathed. When a tsunami floods a city, it doesn't just leave behind destruction, it takes things back with it. Sewage systems rupture, oil tanks are ripped open, factories spill chemicals. As the water recedes, all of this toxic stew is dragged back out to sea, creating a lethal cocktail that devastates marine life. Coral reefs, already fragile from climate change, are often wiped out by the sheer force of the wave and the sediment it stirs up. Shoreline habitats, nurseries for countless species, are buried under layers of silt, concrete, and debris. And migratory patterns for fish, turtles, and birds are thrown into disarray. In Japan's 2011 tsunami, over 5 million tons of debris were swept into the Pacific Ocean. Years later, pieces of that wreckage, including entire fishing boats, were still washing up on American shores. That wasn't just trash. It was an ecological time bomb, sometimes carrying invasive species to new ecosystems completely unprepared for them. And then there's the carbon cost. In a matter of hours, Thousands of cars, factories, and power stations are destroyed, sending huge amounts of pollutants into the air and water. The rebuilding process only adds to the environmental toll: concrete production, fuel use, deforestation. From the sky, a post-tsunami region looks like a wound, a bleeding scar where civilization once stood. But this wound doesn't just hurt humans, it echoes through ecosystems, often for decades. And for those still alive, the next chapter is survival. What does it take to stay alive in the aftermath? The wave has passed, but its aftermath is only just beginning. You, our tsunami surfer, are somehow alive, bruised, dehydrated, sunburned, clinging to a rooftop, or wedged in a palm tree 2 miles inland. The silence is deafening. The air smells of salt, gasoline, and rotting vegetation. And there's no clean water in sight. Now comes the true test: survival. In the immediate hours after a tsunami, the essentials of modern life vanish. Electricity is out. Cell towers are down. Water supplies are contaminated. Roads are either gone or blocked by debris. You can't call for help, can't charge your phone, and forget about ordering DoorDash. Food becomes a critical issue. Grocery stores, if they're still standing, are likely flooded, their goods spoiled. Fishing boats are destroyed. Local farms are underwater or layered in sludge. Relief organizations may take days to arrive, if not weeks, depending on how widespread the disaster is. In the meantime, people turn to whatever they can find: canned goods, rainwater, even fruit from damaged trees, if it hasn't been soaked in toxic runoff. Then there's the medical crisis. Floodwaters carry disease: cholera, dysentery, hepatitis A. Open wounds, already exposed to filth, become infected fast. Hospitals are overwhelmed or completely offline. Without refrigeration, critical medications spoil. In places without proper sanitation, one infection can ripple through hundreds. Psychologically, the toll is immense. Survivors are often gripped by PTSD, survivor's guilt, or sheer mental collapse. People search frantically for missing family members. Children cry for parents. Communities gather in makeshift shelters, schools, temples, rooftops, sharing trauma and whatever food they can find. But even that unity can strain under pressure. Panic, desperation, and misinformation spread like wildfire. And you? If you're lucky, maybe you find a rescue team or hitch a ride on a raft of debris toward higher ground. Maybe someone finds your GoPro footage and it goes viral. But survival isn't just about staying alive for the next 24 hours. It's about enduring the weeks of chaos to come. So how do we move from desperation to strategy? Humanity looks to long-term solutions. Once the immediate chaos fades and the rescue helicopters stop circling, humanity faces a sobering question. How do we prevent this from happening again, or at least survive it better next time? The answer starts with infrastructure. After major tsunamis, like the ones in 2004 and 2011, countries began rethinking how they build. Seawalls were reinforced or redesigned to absorb energy rather than deflect it. Coastal cities implemented vertical evacuation towers, structures specifically built to resist flooding and offer a last resort when escape isn't possible. Japan, for example, poured billions into a coastal defense system stretching hundreds of miles, complete with tsunami sensors and automatic floodgates. Then there's urban planning. Some regions simply decided not to rebuild in high-risk zones. Entire towns were relocated farther inland or to higher elevations. New construction codes required buildings to be elevated on stilts or designed with water flow in mind. Think open ground floors or breakaway walls to reduce structural damage. Technology plays a bigger role too. Early warning systems are now tied into deep-sea pressure sensors, GPS buoys, and even AI-based seismic models that can issue alerts within seconds of an underwater quake. These systems aren't perfect, but they've already saved thousands of lives. On the human side, education and drills are crucial. Communities that practice regular tsunami evacuations, schools, offices, neighborhoods, are more likely to respond quickly and calmly when disaster strikes. In 2004, one girl in Thailand recognized the signs of a tsunami thanks to a geography lesson, and helped save over 100 people. Knowledge, it turns out, can be more powerful than concrete. And let's not forget alternative survival strategies. Some researchers propose amphibious houses, homes that float when floodwaters rise. Others imagine self-sustaining ocean platforms or offshore living structures immune to coastal disasters. Space colonization sounds appealing, but realistically, we're more likely to look downward than upward. Underground bunkers, inland arcologies, or even tsunami-resistant cities built into cliffsides. Still, every strategy has its limits. Nature is relentless, and sometimes, just as we're rebuilding, something even bigger hits, when disaster strikes twice or science gives us a miracle. Just as the dust settles and the world begins piecing itself back together, something shifts. A new threat emerges, not from the sea this time, but from deep within the earth. Weeks after the tsunami, seismic sensors pick up unusual tremors along an adjacent fault line. At first, scientists believe it's aftershocks, but soon the pattern reveals a terrifying truth. The original quake was just a trigger. A larger seismic event is building, one that could dwarf the previous disaster. Geologists race to model scenarios. If the second rupture occurs, it could set off a multi-basin tsunami, rippling across the Pacific and Indian Oceans simultaneously. Entire coastlines, previously considered safe zones, are now at risk. For millions who just started rebuilding, evacuation orders come again, and a second wave of fear takes hold. But amid the panic, something unexpected happens. Science fights back. A global coalition of researchers, engineers, and tech companies fast-tracks an experimental program, a fusion of AI, satellite mapping, and deep-sea robotics designed to detect and preempt tectonic shifts. In a stunning feat of coordination, underwater drones deploy to the trench zones, using sound waves and pressure sensors to map stress points in real time. Then, the breakthrough. A predictive model pinpoints the likely epicenter with 90% accuracy. Governments act quickly. Evacuations are ordered not after the quake, but before. For the first time in human history, we outrun the wave. But the cost is immense. Cities are abandoned. Ports are closed. Economies shudder. Political systems strain under the weight of climate migration and logistical chaos. Some nations open their borders. Others retreat behind them. Refugee camps swell inland. Food shortages spark unrest. Yet amid all of it, humanity adapts. And you? You're no longer just the surfer who rode the first tsunami. You're now a viral legend. The wave whisperer, featured in documentaries, studied in risk management courses, memified on the internet. But fame means little in a world fighting to stay above water, literally and figuratively. Still, in the face of back-to-back catastrophes, a new kind of resilience emerges. People build smarter, think longer term, rethink their relationship with the sea, and soon, they begin to rebuild, not just structures, but civilization itself. The long road to rebirth. After the second tsunami, the world takes a collective breath, and then begins again. What follows isn't a return to normal. It's a reinvention. Entire coastal cities are declared uninhabitable and reclassified as marine buffer zones. Governments offer incentives for people to relocate to higher ground. What were once bustling ports are transformed into mangrove sanctuaries, natural barriers that double as carbon sinks, and storm protectors. Nature is no longer treated as an enemy to conquer, but a system to work with. Urban planners start from scratch. New towns are designed as modular ecosystems, solar-powered, flood-resilient, and interconnected by autonomous vehicles. Homes are printed by giant robotic arms using biodegradable materials. Vertical farms replace sprawling agriculture, reducing reliance on coastal supply chains. Even toilets get smarter, recycling wastewater into irrigation systems. In schools, tsunami preparedness becomes as fundamental as learning to read. Children grow up not fearing the ocean, but understanding its rhythms, how to listen for warning signs, where to run, and why respect beats arrogance when facing nature's force. Science, too, evolves. Global tsunami prediction networks are unified under a single system, managed by AI and open source to every country. Oceanographers and engineers collaborate on floating infrastructure, entire research labs and data centers that can ride out future disasters without interruption. Even personal tech changes. Smartphones come standard with offline evacuation apps. Drones patrol coastlines during high-risk seasons. Culturally, we change as well. The surfer, our hypothetical daredevil from the beginning, is now part of a mythos. His footage becomes the most studied natural disaster video in history. It's shown not for entertainment, but as a living lesson. What happens when thrill meets hubris, and what humanity can survive when it finally listens. Communities that were shattered begin hosting remembrance rituals, floating lantern ceremonies, beachfront gardens, underwater memorials. Survivors form global alliances, sharing stories, support, and strategies. Empathy becomes infrastructure, as vital as roads or levees. And slowly, society doesn't just recover, it grows wiser. But the deeper question remains: what have we truly learned? Reflection, philosophy, and the legacy of disaster. As the years pass and coastlines settle into their new shapes, the tsunamis fade from headlines, but not from memory. They leave behind more than broken buildings and viral videos. They leave behind questions. What does it mean to live alongside forces we can't control? For centuries, humanity has treated nature as something to dominate. We build higher, dig deeper, push harder. But in the face of a wave that redefines the shore, we are reminded, we're not the masters of this planet. We're guests. Survivors speak of the eerie silence before the wave hit, of the ocean pulling back like a breath before a scream. They talk of the weight of decisions made in seconds: run left or right, climb or stay, help or hide. Those decisions now ripple across generations. Families altered, futures rerouted. From a philosophical standpoint, the tsunami becomes a metaphor for impermanence, for humility, for the fragility of our systems. Concrete can crumble, power grids can fail, but community, memory, adaptability, those endure. Religion and spirituality evolve too. Some see the wave as punishment, others see it as awakening. In coastal temples and churches, new rituals emerge, not to ward off disaster, but to honor resilience. Annual Tide Days commemorate not just the loss, but the survival. Art, poetry, and film explode with tsunami imagery, not as spectacle, but as symbol. And in the academic world, the event marks a turning point. A generation of scientists grows up obsessed with waves: oceanographers, structural engineers, psychologists studying trauma and recovery. Tsunami science becomes a standard curriculum in climate policy schools. And yes, the surfer lives on, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a symbol of reckless curiosity. His GoPro footage is archived at global museums, viewed not with ridicule, but with reverence. Because in the end, it wasn't about the ride, it was about the wake that followed. So where do we go from here? The future unfolds, and the ocean waits. Decades have passed, cities have risen far from shorelines. The old coasts, once filled with resorts and boardwalks, are quiet, reclaimed by wetlands, mangroves, and memory. The ocean stands undisturbed, like a wise beast watching silently from the horizon. But humanity has changed. New generations grow up with a dual awareness: admiration for the sea and a profound respect for its fury. Beaches now have vertical escape towers built into their skylines. Coastal architecture looks alien to our former selves: elevated, aerodynamic, amphibious. Kids learn tsunami drills before they can tie their shoes. Emergency shelters double as community centers. No one asks, could it happen again? Lights, everyone knows the answer, and yet something else stirs. A hopefulness. Where there was once fear, there is now foresight. Floating cities dot the Pacific, powered by tides and winds, rising and falling with the ocean's moods. AI-based early warning systems now simulate tectonic stress with real-time accuracy. Some regions have even rewilded their shores entirely, turning dangerous coastlines into ecological sanctuaries that serve both nature and man. Even philosophy evolves. The tsunami becomes part of our collective mythos, not as horror, but as hinge, a moment when the trajectory of civilization changed, when the illusion of dominance gave way to partnership with the planet. And the surfer? In a museum near what used to be Phuket, his board is suspended mid-air, captured in motion. The footage plays on loop, him paddling forward, defiant, ridiculous, human. Beneath it reads a simple plaque, "The Last Wave Rider." He didn't defeat the sea, but he reminded us it's there. The question is no longer, can we survive the next wave? It's, are we ready to live with the waves to come? Because the ocean isn't finished. It never is. And maybe that's the point. Because when you try to surf a tsunami, you don't just challenge nature, you enter a conversation with it. And if you're lucky, you survive long enough to listen. What do you think? Could humanity really survive such a wild scenario? And more importantly, would you ever dare try to surf a tsunami? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more mind-bending what-if adventures, where science meets imagination.